What should the Pittsburgh Steelers focus on this offseason, and what should be their number one priority? Welcome back to Mike Drop Sports, everybody. I'm Jason. Let's dive in here on a Thursday. Welcome back again. I appreciate you all for stopping through. Let's talk about what the Steelers should be focusing on this offseason. What should be their number one priority? How should they really approach this offseason in terms of how to right this ship? Mediocrity has been at the core of this franchise for over a decade now. Mike Tomlin and this football team have been in trouble in terms of being ultra competitive for the ultimate prize, for the only prize that matters, and that is the Lombardi Trophy. And you sit here and you try to dissect this football team as a fan, as an analyst, as a podcaster, whatever. You sit here and you try to break this thing down, and you try to look at it from a perspective of where your emotions are taken out of it if you're a fan, if you're somebody that roots for this team. And you try to really look at it and say to yourself, what should they focus on? Where should they really turn their attention? Should they continue to try to bring players back that have been here for a very long time, or should they utilize those players as pawns and as pieces to gain high value draft capital to bring in other players? You ask yourself all this stuff day in, day out. You're trying to figure this out. And when I look at this team, I say that there are some holes that can't be ignored. One being the schematics. That, of course, has to be the coaching. So you really just have to have a hope and a prayer that changes, because there will be no changes along that front. Maybe some minor changes here with some assistant coaches and things of that nature. But there will be no real changes along that front. So, again, you're just out there on a hope and a prayer. So you kind of eliminate that from the equation here, because you know that that's not something that's going to happen. Then you start to look at the roster. You start to say to yourself, do the Steelers handle this roster properly? It's really hard to say, again, because you lack direction. You lack a clear path, so it's really hard to say what players you should bring in. But if you're looking at this roster right now and you say to yourself, which players should be their priority to bring back? I think one has to be TJ Watt. I think he's a one-hat guy. I think they'll figure out a deal with him. They already figured out how to keep Cam Hayward, so now you have some aging superstars. You have a guy in the back end in Minkah Fitzpatrick that I think you could utilize and still get some high-value return on that investment, since you utilized a pick, a number one pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, who hasn't been productive for over 2.5 years. So you ask yourself, is that something you would want to do? You have George Pickens coming up on a contract that he's going to want, and he's going to want to get done this year. He's going into the last year of his deal. And if you're the Steelers, while you control his outcome, while you control his contract, do you go out there and make a trade for him? Can he bring you enough return on investment to make it worthwhile to get rid of him, to rebuild that room? I think that comes down to what you're able to do in free agency, what you're able to do in the draft. I don't think you'll see anything along the George Pickens front until you are really almost right up against the season. And I say that because of those things that I said, the factors that are listed there, the draft, the free agency market. How were you able to handle those two things, and what did you come away with? That will tell the tale of what they do with one George Pickens. And perhaps if the season's falling apart, maybe they trade him before the trade deadline, if that's how that all works out. But that's a story that's yet to be written, because, again, I don't think that they're going to make any rash decision with him. I think they'll hold that piece until they absolutely have to make a move. And will George be disruptive? I don't know. And should that be a priority of theirs to bring George Pickens back? I think the answer is no. I think that while you have control of his last year of his deal, his rookie deal, I think you figure out a way that you can make some additions by subtraction, get rid of George Pickens, and I think in my opinion, I would do that before the draft to see what kind of draft capital you have to put that into play here in 2025, because I think that you don't want to wait until 2026. I think the fuse has really been lit several years ago on Mike Tomlin, in my opinion. I think that really he's got to start producing a football team that actually is really actually competitive, not just competitive to be average, to be, a regular season. Yeah, they're okay. I think that has to change, and the time is ticking. The fuse is lit with that. And again, I think that when you have pieces like a Minka, like a George, I think that you could go out there and turn those players into some significant value and really turn this roster around in one offseason. And I know people talk about rebuilds and all that stuff, but I think you can really take a couple of the pieces that you have and really eliminate that whole rebuild bullshit and just flop them into some picks, turn them into some draft capital, and turn this roster around in just a few short months. I think you can do that because I don't think this roster was horrible. I just think that there were some pieces that weren't working. I think that there were a lot of schematics that the players that they had didn't match with. So, yeah. I think that that's what they should do here. But again, I don't think they'll do that with George. But again, you bring TJ Watt back. You did Cam Hayward. You got Pat Freiermuth signed. What do you do about the quarterback position? How do you go about that? I think there's three options, which are very obvious: Russ, Justin, or bring somebody else in through the draft. And I think it should be a combination of those answers. I think you should bring Justin Fields back. If you can, if it's financially responsible to do so, because you can't overpay for Justin Fields, because let's face it, he did improve. He improved in a major way, in my opinion. But however, he's still not up in that Patrick Mahomes type area. He's not up in that Super Bowl winning quarterback area just yet. I'm not saying that he can't get there. I'm just saying he isn't there right now, and you can't afford to go out there and make that type of a deal with a player that you're not ultra confident in. You don't know just yet how it would work out long term. So again, you let Russ walk, in my opinion. You let him go do his thing with Pete Carroll in Las Vegas. That will be a good place for him. I think that will work for everybody involved. And I think you go out there and bring Justin Fields back. But again, I think you really put an emphasis here, if you're Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan, on figuring out how to put some of this draft capital together, possibly, and making a move for a bigger name guy, whether that happens in 2025 or if it happens when the draft is in Pittsburgh in 2026. Whatever that may be, you try to start figuring out what kind of compensation, what kind of draft value, money value, whatever, player value that you have to put together in terms of a package, and start to eye a guy. Start to figure out what you got to do to get that guy. Go out there and figure out who that guy is. It doesn't have to be a guy in this draft, and yes, I think it needs to be within the next 2 years. So you go out there and you figure this all out, and you set your eyes on that prize, and you try to work out that compensation to figure out how to bring that player in. And I think that that's what you do, a combination of what we're talking about, the three answers that are available. You go out there and you figure it out with Justin Fields as your top guy for a year or two. And let's just say this, if you start to save and start to figure out how to put the draft capital together to get a big name quarterback, say Justin Fields does work out. You get lucky with that. And all of a sudden now Justin is somebody that you are comfortable with, that you feel like you can win a Super Bowl with. Now you can turn all that value, all that capital into your roster, into the rest of your roster, and reinvest it that way. But again, that's the path I think they should take. And I think the number one priority doesn't have to be TJ Watt, but I think the number one priority is securing your quarterback and the future of your quarterback. And again, it doesn't all have to happen this offseason. The plan can be long-term. The plan could be over the next couple seasons. You don't want to box yourself in with just one thing. I think the Steelers would be very, very, very well served by doing what I'm talking about. Again, bringing Justin in, that's your bridge guy. That's your guy that you're going to Put your a small amount of finances into in terms of quarterback compensation in this league, and you're going to roll with it, and you're going to try to figure out what to do after Justin in the meantime. I think that buys you a year or two to really get this thing worked out. So number one priority for me, where should the Steelers focus their priorities this offseason? It's the quarterback room, the quarterback position. And I think that's where the Steelers have really failed. You've had guys like Mitchell Trubisky. You've reached in the draft for a guy like Kenny Mittens. You've had guys like Russ. You've done everything that Mason Rudolph, that you didn't really give a fair shake to after he performed well, but that's neither here nor there. But those are the guys that you had in there. And I think that it's time for the carousel to stop. And I think it's time to get some stability in that room. And I think that is plaguing the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, again, I think Mike Tomlin has many, many faults. And I think he has many, many issues that I don't know if will ever be corrected. And I highly doubt they will be. But I have one hope for Mike Tomlin. And that is this. Maybe if you bring in a franchise quarterback, maybe if you get that quarterback position stabilized and into a good place, maybe then the success will start to come, and maybe then Mike Tomlin will be able to get this franchise over the hump, get it back into real contention for a Super Bowl title, and to really go after and have a legitimate chance to chase that 7th Lombardi trophy. Maybe that works. Maybe that changes the tides. I still don't believe so, because I think the schematics are so basic and so just bad, just really, really bad, but on both sides of the ball. But we'll see. We'll see. Again, the Steelers are going to be in a very good position this year, guys, this offseason. They're going to have a tremendous amount of cap space, a tremendous amount of resources in order to really right this ship. And I think this is going to be a true test to gauge exactly how Omar Khan, Andy Weidel, and Mike Tomlin all work together as a cohesive group in terms of building this franchise. I think 2025 is going to tell us a lot about the potential of this trio, the potential of if they're going to be able to win a Super Bowl or not. Again, I think that this year is going to tell that story. You've had Omar Khan now through 2 drafts, and I think this third one is going to be the real telltale sign of, is he really truly the con artist? We'll see how that all unfolds. We'll see how this free agency period unfolds. But this offseason is going to be a real turning point for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and priority one has to be to secure that quarterback room by any means necessary. Even if that means you have a bad roster moving into 2025, you take that hit just to go out there and get the guy that you really, really, truly believe in. So however that may work out, we'll see. But that's my options. That's my opinions on what their top priority should be here in 2025 and how they should go about really raising this franchise back up to a real true Super Bowl contender. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. We'll be back tonight with Steel City Live. I think I'm going to kick that off about 5:30. I think that's how I'm going to have to do it, because I got to really try to rush back. I have to pick up my son from work. So I'm going to have to try to rush back, get back to go on Steelers Almighty at 8 o'clock for Steelers end-of-the-year review. So I'm going to try my best to be on time for that. So yeah, I got a lot to do here today. So again, 5:45, 5:30, you'll see Steel City Live here tonight on Mike Drop Sports. And then you're going to move over to Steelers Almighty as we do a panel and Steelers year in review and really jump off there and really try to break down the Steelers here through the 2024 season, and hopefully talk about a little bit of what they can do moving forward to be better. So I thought this show was fitting in terms of their top priorities and things of that nature to kind of just phase into that show tonight. So thank you. Thank you, my friends. Don't forget to beat the shit out of that like button for your boy Jason. I appreciate it. And the channel, Mike Drop Sports. We are growing every single day, and that doesn't happen without your help. So hit that like button, hit that share button. Make sure you're subscribed to the show if you're not already, because I don't know what the hell you're waiting for. So double tap that screen, whatever you got to do. Get them likes fired up and help support the show. And thank you. Thank you to everybody that has supported us here, and we're going to continue this grind, man, and it's going to be a long off season, but we're here to get you through it. So until tonight, I'm Jason. This is Mike Drop Sports. Peace, my friends. See you on the next one.